Welcome everyone and a good day to you all. Thank you for joining the Doing Good Work in Africa webinar. My name is Emiola Abbas. I am the co-founder of DOWA and I'll be your moderator for today's session. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. Kindly note that this webinar is being recorded. All attendees will be placed on mute as they come in, and during the Q&A session, kindly use the Q&A function to ask your questions. You can also raise your hands and you'll be called upon to ask your question. For our agenda for today, we will start with our introduction of DOWA and introduction of our panelists. You will also get a word from our panelists before we move into the Q&A session. After the Q&A session, we will hear from Ola Erugbobo Oyeniyi, the co-founder and CEO of DOWA, and then we will do our wrap-up. To begin with, let me tell you about DOWA. DOWA is an initiative that connects student interns to organizations in Africa who are working to address the development challenges that we face on the continent. The idea is to give these students an opportunity to connect with people who are coming up with innovative solutions to address these challenges and give them the opportunity to also understand the context of doing work in Africa. We're currently running a pilot program with 3 partner organizations with 10 interns who are working remotely to support these partner organizations. Today's webinar is our first, and we'll be looking at what it takes to do good, scalable, and impactful grassroots work. We have speakers from 3 organizations covering agribusiness, entrepreneurship, and social care who will be speaking to you about the work that they're doing today. Be hearing from organizations who are doing that at the grassroots level. We have partners who are in the agri sector, entrepreneurship, as well as social care, who will be speaking to you today. And we encourage you to participate actively and ask questions. As I said earlier on, please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. I'm assuming that all our panelists are back online because I know that we had a bit of connection issues for a couple of people, but I think I can see everyone. So with that, I'm going to introduce the panelists, just go through a quick bio for each one of them. The first person is David Ogundeko from Phonema. David is the founder and CEO of Phonema. He's a polymath generalist who has been building companies within the venture capital space for about 4 years. He has broad experience in his career journey in the fields of advisory and market intelligence, as well as energy infrastructure finance. He has built and is currently managing a portfolio of companies worth over $20 million. His background in software and engineering, as well as infrastructure financing, has helped him shape that agenda. And it might interest you to know that apart from being a man of faith, David is also an enthusiast of theoretical maths and physics, and as well as he's curious about quasars, pulsars, binary stars, and quantum entanglement. If you think you're on Big Bang Theory, forgive me, but I just wanted to share some of David's interests with you. Next on the panel would be Alex Oshikena, who's currently the platform coordinator for Buy From Farms. Alex is a strategy, business development, and marketing professional with experience across regions from North America to Sub-Saharan Africa, across industries including fast-moving consumer goods, energy, manufacturing, financial services, and management consulting. He's had a diverse educational background. He started with a chemical engineering degree and then went on to do an MBA program with Kellogg School of Management, as well as the London Business School in the UK. Our third panelist is Dr. Meiro Mandara, who is the founder and the board chair for Girl Child Concerns. She's a gynecologist and a public health physician with experience across global health spheres. She has worked in multiple positions and spearheaded different initiatives. She was the senior advisor for USAID on health and a health system specialist at the University of Columbia, as well as the country representative for the Parkard Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in Nigeria. She's enthusiastic about women and girl development. She's also a member of several boards at the UN, and she's dedicated her life to women's rights and public health. And she's very passionate about everything she does. So with that, I'm going to start with just an opener from our sponsors. We'll start with David, just for him to give you an overview of what FUNEMA does and his role and what they're currently doing with our interns. Thank you very much. Over to you, David.
Thanks, Emiola. I think you've done a fantastic job in introducing me. I can't do better than that. But I will go ahead and say that, yes, I'm David Ogundeko. I'm the founder and the CEO of FUNEMA. In FUNEMA, we believe that we have been given the grace to catalyze economic growth in emerging markets by trying to solve the fundamental problem of poverty in underserved communities. And we are doing this by building around these communities ecosystems that can enable the growth of micro businesses into SMEs. When we compare the African markets to advanced OECD countries, we realize that over 60% of the GDP in the US, for example, is contributed by SMEs. But when you come back to Africa, it's a very interesting contrast picture of reality we have in Africa. And I would like to zoom into Nigeria. In 2012, a survey was carried out by Smithon, and 37 million businesses were registered. However, 90% of that 37 million businesses are actually micro businesses. And micro businesses are businesses that are categorized by a key attribute of just being able to employ between 1 to 9 people, and maybe they have a startup capital of about 50,000 naira. That's roughly about $200. But when you compare that to the population size of Nigeria, I mean, we boast of over 200 million people. I'm quite sure we're close to 300 anyways, but that's an unofficial number. You compare that statistics and then realize that there's a huge gap in terms of employment opportunity. Just about 13 million micro businesses that can only employ about 1 to 5 people, and we have over 200 million Nigerians. Now, in FUNEMA, we foresee a future where these micro businesses can grow well enough to, first of all, gainfully employ local talents, thereby releasing wealth into their hands. But more importantly, they can evolve into becoming SMEs, small businesses that can employ more than 5 people. Hopefully, they can start increasing their workforce to between 10 and 50 people. Because that survey actually highlighted the fact that, yes, we had 90% of the businesses as of the business in Nigeria as micro businesses, and just about 9% are small businesses, and only 1% are medium-sized businesses that can employ between 100 and 200 people. That is a major problem, and it means that we don't have a market that is mature enough to sustain growth, but also to provide access to wealth and liquidity, which we need for a healthy capital market. Now, we are building this future through a co-building partnership with entrepreneurs in our portfolio that are focused on building inclusive and scalable tech solutions addressing grassroots problems in these communities. And we are supporting our founders through a hybrid investment approach of human capital, market access, and financial capital. And we started way back in 2017 with 2 companies in our portfolio, and now we've grown to 11 companies in our portfolio. And these companies have and still are impacting thousands of micro to small businesses, both locally in Africa and also globally as well. And we hope in the near future that we can scale these impacts to millions of businesses globally and help them to grow from micro to small businesses. And that's what we are doing in FUNEMA.
Thank you very much, David, for that introduction of what you're doing at FUNEMA. We'll speak about some of the concepts you touched on as we do the Q&A. I'm sure the audience will be curious to ask you a few questions about the challenges these entrepreneurs are facing in the pandemic era that we are now. So we're going to move over to Alex Oshikena from Buy From Farms to do a quick introduction of Buy From Farms and what he's doing with Buy From Farms. Thank you.
Hi everyone. This is Alex. So quick one. I'm where I am right now. It's a bit of noise. So forgive me up front if you get noisy. My apologies. So this is Alex calling from Lagos. I'm the coordinator for Buy From Farms. And basically what we do in Buy From Farms. Actually, I'll step back a bit. So Buy From Farms is a group of individuals who have been together for 5 years. Before now, we were part of a team working on a project called Carver. And for Carver, the goal of Carver really was to connect smallholder farmers to the market, right? So we focused on market access. Market access in this case meaning how do we get farmers to the end markets as consumers, right? How do you get farmers to processors who need their products? How do you get farmers to suppliers who need to use their products as raw materials for other products? So that was our focus on that project. And the reason why that was a priority for us was simple. Our goal was to look for ways to maximize farmer revenue. And we realized we could either do that by increasing their yield, which was limited. We could do that by increasing their hectares of farm, which was limited as well. But trying to optimize their revenue is something we can do to scale and leverage our resources. So that became our focus. So the project ended last year, and then after it ended and the funding stopped, we moved on from that team, and then we came together and started a project ourselves called Buy From Farms, where we focus on trying to help our farmers who at this point no longer had someone helping them link to markets. So at this point we have team members in Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Ethiopia somewhat, Nigeria, and Ghana. And coming from our last 4 or 5 years of work, we also have a large group of farmer networks, which are built over time as well, right? Farmers who produce different products, root crops like yam, cassava, and the rest. And for this project, our goal is to now how do we get them in clusters? How do we aggregate their produce and get it to markets so they make more than they make currently? And then ultimately, as a group, we play our part in increasing revenues for farmers and then reducing poverty overall for Africa. Because, like a lot of folks know, about 60% of Africans are farmers overall. So to tackle poverty in Africa, you need to fix smaller farmers and ensure they make the most they can for farming. So that's really what we do. How do we make them make more money? That's our focus right now.
Thanks a lot, Alex. I think it'll be interesting to hear from you as well as David at Phonema how you're seeing the different challenges in the countries that you're working on. And we'll speak to that in the course of the webinar if we have the time. So I'm now going to hand over to Dr. Mandara to do the introduction for Girl Child Concerns. Thank you. Dr. Mandara, over to you.
Thank you very much. Girl Child Concerns is a registered non-governmental organization that's based in Nigeria. We started over 20 years ago as an informal group of women who came together and wanted to address some fundamental questions we've come across in our lives. Particularly the fact that we were opportuned. We saw a lot of things, and as I've been introduced, I'm a gynecologist. So we saw a lot of health issues, particularly things like vesicovaginal fistulae. We saw things like protracted labor, young people dying at a very early age in childbirth. And we also saw ourselves as also women who grew up in similar environment. And the question was, why aren't we getting the same thing that these sisters and these little girls are getting to? So we sat down and we realized that, the main difference between us and any other girl or woman that went through all the complications of pregnancy, childbirth, poverty, and everything that comes around with it is lack of education. So we came together and decided to create an organization that's dedicated to ensuring that every girl has an opportunity to access education regardless of her financial situation. So we registered, and since then we've been working to get girls from the very, very rural areas of Nigeria where girls' enrollment in secondary school is almost absent, where girls' completion of secondary school is almost absent. And so basically what we do is we go look at the data for the country, look at areas, nooks and corners where girls' enrollment, retention, and completion of secondary school is next to nothing, and then we run after those. Our staff go in there to look at, to assess, get the kind of the most exciting girls as you can get in any village, girls that are simply just, whose eyes are brightened up by the fact that one day they want to be like their teacher or like a nurse or something, that not necessarily because they could read or write or anything. And then we pick them up from, if you like, grade 6 for you, and we stay with them until they finish grade 12. So we select them based on a number of criteria. Obviously, if you're a girl from a very, very poor family background, without our support, you will not go to school. We also have some conditions that your parents must sign off that they must allow you to finish secondary school, and you also must, we must sign that you will mentor 5 other children and in your community, or your little brothers or sisters, or any 5 children that you come across in your community. And then finally, an undertaking to participate in our annual booth camp, where they meet women as mentors to be able to see what the future looks like. So this is what we've done in GCC over the last about 16 years or so, in a more structured form, getting girls, giving them scholarship, and seeing them through finishing secondary school. At the moment, we've had over 500 girls that have passed through our scholarship. The first 2 girls, one is a lecturer in College of Education, the other is a pharmacist. Well, we have a number of graduates, we have a number of students that are in various universities, but our scholarship ends with secondary school and their WAEC and their application to the university. Once they get into the university, our relationship becomes mentorship. We don't give them financial support, but we help them get scholarships elsewhere because we can't afford. Most of what we do in that is we raise funds from friends. Unfortunately, there are very few donors who want to give scholarship for 6 years or 7 years. Most donors want to do something for 2 years or 3 years to see results. And our focus is really long-term. 6-7 years is the minimum we are engaged with any girl. So, so this is our scholarship scheme. GCC also does a lot of training on reproductive health. Being an obstetrician, gynecologist, and reproductive health expert, we can't but to do that as well. So we do a lot of training of village health workers. For example, in the Northeast Nigeria now, with the advent of Boko Haram, we're spending almost 70% of our time in that. We're training village health workers in rural areas where there are no nurses and doctors. And these women who are usually in their 20s are able to then provide very basic first aid, how to treat malaria, how to deal with diarrhea when a child, to give ORS, to refer children for immunization, to check and see if a woman is anemia, and they refer them to the hospital or to the clinic, whatever. So we do that. We also do a lot of work on community sensitization, because a lot of what we do has to do with social justice and equity. And so therefore we need to bring communities on board. We sensitize communities, a lot of sensitization on the value of girls' education, on the value of going to hospital, maternal care, child care, immunization, and literally community sensitization around the core work we do. Recently, for example, we're working with MacArthur Foundation to monitor the homegrown school feeding program, and we're taking the lessons there to get communities to monitor girls' enrollment, retention, and completion in secondary school. Our girls also, we do a lot of skills acquisition, particularly in the internally displaced camps. If you look at our website, we have the signature hats that are made from caps that are made in Borno. We give capital to women and they do them, and we buy off them, go and sell from Abuja. In Abuja, whatever profit we make, and Abuja and Lagos actually, whatever profit we make, we give it to other women. So it has a ripple effect. In the last 2 years, because we commute a lot of girls during the Boko Haram crisis, we had to commute girls a whole day's drive to other places that are safe for them to go to school. But now that with relative peace in Borno, we have built our own school. It's called the Girls Academy. And we have already shortlisted 350 girls to start with the foundation class, where they will literally learn literacy, numeracy, values, and IT. And then over the 6 years of their secondary education, we're hoping to give them first-class secondary education, teach them life skills around adolescent sexual reproductive health, if you like, their grounding in their humanity as girls and their ability to define who they are. And then finally, market-relevant livelihood skills. Instead of the traditional teaching girls how to knit and how to cook, we want to also explore skills acquisition around mobile phone repair, around coding later, around computer hardware repair, and so on and so forth, so that they can, by the end of secondary school, we're hoping that these girls would have not just finished secondary school, but they also have a choice to start their own earning power, earning a living and supporting their parents, because poverty is actually real for all of the people we do. The scholarship is the hardest to pull through because we rely on a lot of times with individuals donating and adopting girls to pay for their fees. And once we give scholarship, our scholarship would include things like school fees, books, sandals, shoes, underwear, everything, including sanitary pad, toiletries, confectionaries, everything. We literally take up 100% of their responsibilities because the parents simply cannot afford. So this is what GCC is. And did you want us to talk about what we're doing with the interns? Because nobody did.
Yes, Dr. Mandara, that was going to actually be my opener. So I think I'll start with perhaps David, just to get a context of what our interns are helping them with at the moment. And then we'll come back to you, Dr. Mandara. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. So the interns have been very, very helpful in helping us to scale our operations. I'm proud to be joining us. We had about 3 to 4 companies in our portfolio, and we grew that number to 11 in just about a month. So scaling how we support our companies in offering their services to the target market was very, very crucial, and the interns have been very, very instrumental in helping us to scale our impacts and scaling how we support our portfolio companies.
Okay. Thank you, David. Alex, can you just share your insights on how our interns are helping you with your work? Thank you.
So our interns are working on parts that are a lot more strategic, right? So I think at this stage we're trying to work on prioritizing the key crops and the key locations and the markets to focus on. So our interns are actually working on foundational items that sort of defines the goal for us going forward. So they're doing a lot of work on strategy, crop strategy, the supply strategy, and then also funding as well. So they're doing a bit of work on across several areas.
Thanks, Alex. So Dr. Mandar, I think the way you actually gave the intro would be very useful to also tell us how the interns are working in the different aspects of the work that you're doing. So if you could please speak on that. Thank you very much.
We just had the interns working, and this is the first week actually. And so we currently have 2 interns. One is going to be helping us with profiling GCC more professionally, putting up everything we're doing into as a kind of a format that's going to be used for fundraising, so that we profile everything we're doing together and create a profile for the organization that we can use for fundraising. She's also going to be helping with, if you like, communication tools, so that we're expanding our reach. The other one is going to build on what the first one is doing. So they're going to be working a lot together to actually open up, give GCC more visibility, so that we're able to connect with other organizations that are doing similar work, also other foundations and agencies that are interested in looking at the root causes of some of these things. On our own part, we did ask them what exactly they want to learn from GCC, and a lot of them want to learn local context of how we work. So we're pairing up with specific mentors that will guide them through understanding content for the girls' education, through understanding contents for the village health workers, and they're going to be, so if like what they will do is they will move GCC from the status where we are to a more a better visibility. And they will also be working with the team that is working in the US towards the registration of GCC Global, based in the US. So this is what we hope to be able to do over the next 5 to 6 weeks with the interns.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandara. And leading on from that, I guess I should also say that we also at DOWA have one intern working with us, and she's been leading all the communication and data analysis for us. She's been very instrumental in setting up this webinar as well. We found that there are various ways to create synergies between what we're doing at DOWA and what our sponsor organizations and partner organizations are also doing. So we're ensuring that we keep the link open, and our intern has been very critical to doing that piece of work for us. Maybe let me just ask another general question before I hand over to Adeze to lead some of the questions that are coming out of the Q&A function. I think given where we are, we're doing remote internships now, and one of the things that everybody is facing, I think no matter where you are in the world, is the situation around the pandemic. So I think it would be good to hear from all of you how this is shaping or reshaping your strategy around what you're doing, perhaps thinking about additional things and maybe introducing new challenges that were not foreseen. Obviously, for most of us, these challenges were not foreseen in the way you were doing your work. Thank you. Let's start with Dr. Mandara. Thanks.
Thank you very much. One of the key, we've had to do quite a lot of things differently. You recall I said to you that most of our village health workers are in a remote part of Borno State where there are no nurses, no doctors, and sometimes very, very basic health posts in Boko Haram ravine areas. Because these people are non-health workers and we only train them for 6 weeks, we have to have regular update for them and give them modules around different learning. We've had to, we usually go to them and we spend a couple of days with them in each village. With COVID, we've had to now create content on WhatsApp voice over. So we created the content and somebody read it in English and then somebody read it in the local languages, and we just send them through WhatsApp as bulk WhatsApp messages. And then they listen, and then if they have questions, they WhatsApp us the questions, because if you remember, they're not very literate, they're just primary school graduates and some dropouts of secondary school. So that's been very interesting. We never knew we could teach over WhatsApp, but it's happening. And they don't have internet, so we don't have the luxury of Zoom. The other thing that, and as you know, our thrust of work is education for the girls, but all schools are now closed and our girls are in IDP camps, and there's no gathering of more than 20 people and a lot of things. And we have a cohort of 350 that are about to start school, so literally know nothing. So what we've used our time, we just started last week actually, is to meet. We went ahead and hired our teachers, and the teachers were trained on psychosocial support for Boko Haram affected people. So now we get them in small circles of not more than 20 in an open space under the tree, sitting on a mat, to talk to these children around, to give them psychosocial support so that they are being prepared to face life. And in the process, you can't believe it, the ages 10 to 13, and we only teaching them Queen Primer, 4-letter words and three, 4 word sentences. So our hope is that by the time all the lockdown is mellowed, we may not get rid of it soon, would be able to start some teaching. Most of the government ways of teaching children in rural areas has been through radio, and our children don't even have the radio. And in any case, they were not in school. The children we've had who are in senior secondary school that have also been at home, we're also trying to see how best we can support them. It's been quite challenging, honestly. It's been quite challenging. But what I also realized is now we work longer hours because we're Zooming every time. So that's not healthy. So we're trying to see how we can reduce our Zoom calls as well.
Thank you very much for that, Dr. Mandara. Alex, it'd be good to hear from you. What's changing with you with the pandemic? Thank you. Okay, maybe we can go to. Okay, Alex is on. Thank you very much, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, I missed the question. What's the question again?
The challenges your organization is facing in relation to the pandemic and what you've changed to adapt to this.
Yeah. Okay, so I think for us the biggest one is having to work remotely because we work with a lot of smallholder farmers. We're used to being on the field, talking to farmers, getting them aggregated, right? But now, because of lockdowns and because of the pandemic, it's tough to get back on the field and talk to farmers. And a lot of farmers also don't have mobile phones as well, and those that do are barely connected. So I think getting across the farmers and getting the job done in the field has been tough for one. And then as a team as well, I think it's been tough working remotely. We've had to live on Skype and Zoom with our team and with the interns as well. So that for us is new, something we've not done before now. We are learning and making changes as we go along. I think for us, the big thing going forward, for us to be trying to look for ways of creating smaller local groups for or farmer clusters in certain regions. So that way we have team members that can manage the farmers in our absence. So what that means is maybe we get to show up to some regions maybe once in 2 weeks or once in 2 months or once a month at the most. So these are things we are trying to consider now versus face-to-face engagements, which we are used to. So that's a big one. Yeah, otherwise, that's a big one for me.
Thanks a lot, Alex. And David, can you please share with us some of your challenges at FONEMA and what you're doing to manage them? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Emiola. For FONEMA, we're not really facing a lot of challenges, really. Rather, we are more concerned about our portfolio companies. However, we're quite happy at the fact that we've sort of built a remote culture across board. So we've been working remotely for the past 4 years in FONEMA, and with our companies, we've ingrained the culture of digitalization. So I would say operationally, we were able to adjust very easily. However, the major challenges that we're facing rather is the performance of our companies in the markets that they're playing in. But I would also say that is a bit of a bittersweet. Should I say we're having a bittersweet reality, because for some companies, the pandemic has opened up the markets much better. And they're actually growing, and these are companies that have a global global market reach, and they're benefiting from the move of most traditional businesses to digital business models. So they're actually growing. They are revenue has grown by over 40% in the past 3 months. And then we also realized that because of how we've been able to build a culture of flexibility and being able to adapt quickly. In fact, when the pandemic came about in April, we designed a strategy framework helping our companies to strategize in the next 18 months. To first of all contract, review the entire business model, and review the entire OKRs or the strategic goals that we were running on. We had to change everything and adjust to the market. And what that created was some of our companies repurposing the technology to start solving problems that COVID had created. A perfect example is a company we have based in Lagos. And they have a technology that enables OEM companies to track the journey of their products from the manufacturing space down to the last mile customer. But then we also realized that the data that we were generating and the technology that was powering that data generation could also be repurposed to track the impact of the virus and the spread of the virus and in Nigeria and also Africa as well. And because we realized that the lack of data visibility in Nigeria was a major problem, and data is heavily fragmented. But our technology was able to scale across the entire country, and we created a product that was sponsored by GIZ and the CDC, Africa CDC, and that gave them a dashboard to view the spread of the virus across Nigeria. And now we're currently working on scaling that information across, that technology across Africa as a whole. So operationally, I would say that it was pretty much the same. Our founders were pretty much used to using online tools to run their businesses. But for market performance, it's been more of a bittersweet. We've got some companies that had to shut down operations and they really couldn't do anything about it. But we also have some other companies that are growing remarkably well and performing very well.
Thanks a lot for that, David. I would imagine that the companies would be facing challenges as well, and we'll maybe be able to unpack that through some of our questions. The Q&A session will be moderated by Adeze Okore. She's one of our student partners here. Also, one of the organizations sponsoring this session is SOSA, which is Scholars in Our Society and in Africa, a bunch of African students that are studying in the United States. So Adeze is one of them, and she'll be moderating the Q&A session a bit later. Adeze is a graduate of Cornell. She finished just this May in 2020 with a BS in Biology and Society and a minor in Health Equity. She will be working at the Sporting Center for Health Initiatives at Cornell Health as a public health fellow for a year before she goes on to pursue a master's in public health. Adeze, as I said, is one of the members of the Scholars in Our Society and Africa. We have a couple of them that have been working with us as our partners. We actually call them the fellows of the DOWA organization. And just like the DOWA interns, they've been very, very fantastic in getting DOWA off the ground, strategy, putting documents together, working late nights. And it's been really good. I think for me and for Ola, it speaks to what, these internship opportunities can do in harnessing some of the skills that these young ones have and what they can bring to the continent. So over to you, Adeze. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amiola, and also thank you to David and Alex and Dr. Mandara for sharing with us the incredible work that you're doing. And I know, especially from the student and the young person's perspective, it's greatly appreciated that we have this space to learn directly from you guys about what this grassroots work entails, and try to see the opportunities that we can contribute positively to the continent. And so I'll start by posing some questions that some of our attendees have shared for you guys to answer. The first one is for David, and one attendee had asked whether you could provide an answer about how you've been able to specifically provide support to businesses that are needing to transition to this digital platform that weren't necessarily doing so prior to this pandemic. And if you could share what your mentorship with relationship with these businesses has looked like, and any specific success stories that you're proud of. It would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks for that question, Adeze. I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the question is just to talk about specifically what the mentorship or relationship that you've had with businesses has looked
Okay,
like.
that's one part.
Yeah.
And the second part, yeah.
Any success stories in particular that you're proud of and you would like to share?
Okay, so our work is, we don't call it a mentorship. We call it more of a co-building partnership with our founders. And there's a reason why we designed that model. And this was driven by my experience in the VC space prior to starting Phonema. I realized that there's a strong misalignment with how venture capital works in the African space because we couldn't find a lot of interesting deals that were sustainable enough or had the right team to power to provide the kind of returns we were looking for. So we had to pass on quite a number of investment opportunities. But then I realized that the reason why we could not invest in those companies is because these were very rugged entrepreneurs, homegrown founders who most likely did not have sophisticated education and did not have the team that had the right exposure and experience that can build companies that can provide the kind of returns that most funds are looking for. And what you find in Nigeria and in Africa is it's pretty much everyone is an entrepreneur. Everyone can pretty much hustle, but it's one thing to make money, but it's another thing to actually build a company. So we design our model to provide access to knowledge and to experience, but in a co-building partnership. And how we do that is we join the company, basically. We take on the role as a shadow co-founder. So we have a full skin in the game. We can even take on key executive roles in the company. I've been a CEO in some of my portfolio companies. I've taken the role of Chief Operating Officer. I'm currently the head of partnerships for another company, and I might be an interim CFO in the next few weeks for another company as well. But what we've realized is, because these companies are very early stage companies, we've saved them the finance required to hire someone of my experience and some of my capacity. Right, because if they can't even afford my salary, they will have to worry about paying about $80,000 a year, and the average ticket size that you find that most very early stage startups or companies in Nigeria can raise is between $50,000 and $100,000. So there's a strong misalignment with what's obtainable in the market and what these founders need to grow their company sustainably and to grow fast as well. And the kind of entrepreneurs that we also focused on, because we focus on entrepreneurs that are solving problems in the last mile, because our passion is to impact the last mile, where we have the micro businesses that we want to help to grow into small businesses. Now, these founders are building companies that most VC funds do not find quite attractive. Why? Because there's a lot of heavy lifting required. They are playing in a space that is just not developed. It's not mature enough. It can't really provide the skill and the speed that an average fund would be looking for, because an average fund would want to exit in about 4 to 5 years, and the kind of returns they're looking for, the businesses in that space cannot really provide that. So that already even limits their access to capital. It's bad enough that the capital available in the early stage space in Africa is not enough, but they have a double disadvantage, because now they're focused on solving real problems. They're not attractive problems, but real problems in the last mile that most VCs would not exactly find quite attractive. Why? Because the people you find in that space, the customers you find in that space, are not fully empowered in terms of economically and in terms of technology. A lot of these people don't even have mobile phones. They don't have smartphones. They don't have access to internet. And quite a number of them don't even have bank accounts. So if their target customers or the addressable market size is made up of people or businesses with those attributes, then obviously scale becomes a problem. So our model, we design our model to work with those founders, help them build the right infrastructure around their ideas. They can leverage on our expertise. They can leverage on our time, because we're very hands-on with our companies. We work with them every single day, and we have a 4 to 5 year partnership. And that was designed for a reason, because we know that it takes roughly about 4 to 5 years before any startup can begin to make sense, can begin to achieve some sort of traction in the market, and can grow sustainably to start scaling. But the first 4 years are very difficult, right? And we know that many companies fail within the first year. In fact, the third year is the most critical point in any startup's life cycle, be it a social enterprise or be it a high growth technology startup. So we give them access to our knowledge, we give them access to our time and expertise, and we work with them almost like we are co-founders. We work with them on a daily basis, building the right structure around their business. But more importantly, we want them to succeed, first of all, in their inclusive innovation. And then we also help to build a hybrid model around their social enterprise that is scalable enough to engage institutional investment. And I would like to narrow down to a key use case by a portfolio company of ours called OSB. When OSB started in 2017, we started as a purely financial services company, and we were providing microloans to open store market traders, which we like to call Yalata in Lagos. And these businesses, interestingly enough, we started this business in the advent of the fintech era, in Nigeria, because we had the likes of Branch, we had the likes of QuickCheck, we had the likes of Pay Later, mushrooming everywhere. However, we were targeting a market of micro businesses that didn't have smartphones. So obviously, we couldn't exactly design an application and tell them to go download our app on the Android store. They didn't even have bank accounts. So, okay, how are we going to get our money back? And English language was a major problem. So yes, so there was a language barrier, and they didn't even have access to the internet. But we chose that market because we realized that's where the real market is, and they're in the millions. And if we can't help them to grow, then we will be like every other venture out there, playing in the very limited space of businesses that can afford, or people that can be easily reached through digital platforms. So we're providing loans very, very, very manually. We would go to these markets. We would engage with the head of the market, form a relationship with the head of the market. They are called Yaoloja in Lagos. That's the Yoruba term for head of the market. And through her, we would design a credit scoring mechanism, because she would point out those that are eligible for loans and those that are not eligible for loans, and she would encourage those that are not eligible for loans to work better so they can also access loans, because these businesses, due to the fact that they were not bankable, they didn't have bank accounts, they could not access loans. And the MFBs out there, that's the microfinancial banks out there, they did not like the terms that the MFBs were giving them. So they didn't even patronize the services of microfinance institutions in the markets. So we started in the first year, 2017. They would fill out paper forms and we would give them loans in cash. We give them about 2 to 3 months payback period. And we also realized that the major reason why a lot of them did not even have bank accounts was because they complained that, first of all, the banks don't treat them as real customers, so they didn't even feel welcome. But second of all, they don't have the time to go to banks because they're so busy manning their markets and protecting their products. They can't even afford to hire people to man their shops or their selling points and giving them time to go to the bank. So. For those who have tried getting loans from banks in the past, they had issues of going to pay the bank when it was time, when their loan was due. And that made them default. not voluntarily, but just out of circumstance. And obviously they were flagged as bad borrowers, and they could not get access more loans. So we designed our model to pay them. I mean, of course, we give the cash, we disburse the cash in person because they didn't have bank accounts anyways. But we would go every week to collect their payments back when the payment was due. So we made it very easy and very convenient for them. And I would say that in that year alone, we gave out over 500 loans, 90% were women. We started with just $300 in January 2017, and we ended with about $80,000 in loans by the end of 2017. And in 2018, we grew our loan balance sheet to 1.5 million US dollars. And I would like to note that we only raised about $100,000 in debt, and we grew our loan base to 1.5 million US dollars in about 18 months. Now that even proves that, yes, we might say that these businesses are not exactly economically sustainable, but then again, it's quite interesting that the data that we have proves otherwise. We're able to scale, and I would also say that the default rate was less than 5%. Now, in the second year, we were able to encourage these micro businesses or traders to start receiving their loans through a debit card system. Right? They didn't have bank accounts. We understood that, but we told them that, hey, we've given you guys loans in the past. If you want to get access to more loans, we would like you guys to get it through an ATM card, because that way we can avoid potential robberies when coming to these borrowers give you guys the cash, and that was quite remarkable. They agreed to it, and in the third year in 2019, they actually said that they want to start saving their monies with us, and we then use the debit card system that we designed in the previous year. We use that to create a virtual wallet account, and through that account they're now saving, and we made it a corporate account because they wanted to have the experience of every time they deposit their money in the account, they want to get an alert and get access to their bank statements. We were able to enable the growth of these traders who didn't have bank accounts in the first place, didn't have any sort of technology around the operations and around their business. And in the space of 3 years, now they're now bank account holders, and they're using a mobile technology that we've built. And the plans that we have for the next 2 years is to move them into using smartphones. We are going to provide them the smartphones actually, and the smartphones will come coupled with the mobile apps that they can start using to engage savings and loan facilities. So we've been able to impact these micro businesses, of course, in partnership with our portfolio companies, but we've impacted these businesses. We've solved their problems. We met them where they were, solved their problem, and helped them to evolve over 3 years into adapting technology innovation in solving the same problem. The primary pain was solved, first of all, the pain of lack of access to capital. But now they're looking to be able to solve the same problem with convenience, and they know that technology is providing them that convenience.
Thank you very much, David, for that answer. Honestly, what I took from it, what I could appreciate from that is the importance that you guys are demonstrating as the example of needing to build relationships with the people and actually have skin in the game. But as you said, meeting people where they're at and empowering them where they're at, and not necessarily stripping them of their autonomy, and then filling those gaps where there's inconveniences, either like monetarily or technologically, and then building that relationship over time. So thank you for that answer. And I would now like to let the attendees know that the DOWA team will be enabling you guys to ask the questions that you have directly. So if you are able to use the raise your hand function, you can be unmuted, and then we'll let you know that you can now speak to ask your question, either generally to our panelists or directed to a specific panelist.
Hi, hello everyone. I'm Toluwani from Houston, Texas, and I have a question for Dr. Mandara. I really loved hearing about what you mentioned about psychosocial support in the Boko Haram area, well, areas affected by Boko Haram. And that work sounds massively impactful. And I'd love to know about any specific examples of those discussions, how they were held, and anything around that that you'd like to share with us.
Thank you very much. The psychosocial support, we had actually been giving psychosocial support to the girls who've had that are now been with us for the last 7 years. We just had some go to the university, but this particular cohort, there's this particular cohort that have been with us now 5 years. And in this, when we took them, they were all between the ages of 10 and 13. And it was very, very traumatic. I never knew it's possible that young children could go through that and actually come the other side sane.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a group of girls that were forced by Boko Haram to about 4 or 5 of them will hold the body of a man. They will tie a man, get them two to hold the 2 hands, one the head, one another leg, and the other another leg, and attempt to throw the person inside a pool, and mid-air, Boko Haram will just shoot. And this is the kinds of things that the girls had. They were hallucinating, and some have their parents missing, some have seen human head being tied to a motorbike, really grueling scenarios. But what we did was we got them, we gave them a confidentiality. So only us, the members within GCC, knew who they were, what they went through. Even the schools, we got them to talk to the counselors. But a lot of the lifting were done by specific staff of GCC. But what we found most useful is not what we said to them, but what we did with them. We had a lot of women groups, and women who are interested adopt them as members of their family. So they adopt them as one of their children, not formal adoption, but they take care of them. During holidays, they come home. If they have problems, they talk to them. And we also have dedicated staff that sometimes even go and live with them in school and support them. But it's the love. That's what we found, the love that they got, and the hope that there is hope on the other side. And during holidays, we got them to write their stories, to talk about their dreams. We danced, we wept. I mean, I didn't know I was a good dancer, but I had to learn to dance, to just do everything that kids did. They were learning how to do soccer in the evening. So what was useful is what we did with them. We didn't give them time to feel lonely. They had a family, and that was what was most significant. And by the way, before then, none of us was a trained psychosocial person, but we all just had to learn, and we were very careful about confidentiality. For example, the escaped Chibok girls, the celebrated escaped Chibok girls that people thought were abandoned by government, were with us in GCC for about 3 years and 4 years, for 4 years, when after abduction, and they stayed with us. We had to get them back to school after, and then it took them 3 years to complete secondary school, even though they were writing their final secondary school exam. And we had to keep their identity. Even the schools we sent them, only the proprietors of the school and the principal knew who they were. Other teachers didn't know what they were, because parents were running away from any school where you put children. They were stigmatized. They said, if the Boko Haram escaped girls here, we will take away our children because we're afraid Boko Haram will run after them. But now they're very successful. They're finished. In fact, I'm so happy. One of them that is in a university in the US, I just got an email that she got the Dean's Award. And this, I mean, it's so incredible. So psychosocial support, we learned it. How we do it, our own way. I don't know if our own way has any is anywhere in the textbook, but we've come up with how we do ours.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think you've shared so much, and I want to give time for other people as well. But my response in short is that I love that you mentioned that you weren't psychosocial experts before, and that it's very possible to develop these skills to meet the needs of like the communities that you care for. So thank you so much.
Adeze, you're on mute.
I can now ask, if nobody else is raising their hand, another question that we got in the Q&A chat. This one is for Alex, and they asked if you could share a major accomplishment and a major obstacle that you and your team faced during the kava stage of your business and what you learned during that time.
Yeah, sure. Sure. So I think for the kava project, right, I think the biggest obstacle we face, and again still face now, is actually access to finance for most farmers, right? Because I think there's a question I saw earlier in the group. Someone asking me what are the biggest problems farmers face in trying to scale up. So I think I'll try and answer both at the same time. The first one is access to finance, right? That's the obstacle we face really, because that sort of drives how much farmers farm, how much produce they get for the next year, how much fertilizer they can get and stuff like that. So that's a big one. Farmers, you don't have the collateral to get from banks. They have no access to banks. They don't know how the banking system works as well. And then most banks and financial houses, right, do not understand how to define the risk profile of farmers and agro experts. So most times they never get loans anyway. So that's one thing we face. And then the next one we face, which is actually, in my opinion, would be access to market is the other big one where we face as well, which is actually why the kava was started and also why we are buying from farms now. And access to market is actually everything, right? So it's farming, and then there's getting your products to the right markets. Because access to market is what defines the revenue as a farmer going forward. Before we came on the project, right? Because our farmers, I'll give you an example. For example, use Nigeria as an example. Before kava started, ton of cassava in Nigeria. When farmers farm cassava in Kwara and Edo, in Kobe, different states, right? A ton of cassava was about 6,000 or 7,000 naira. That's about $15 now per ton. And then and the reason for that was simple, right? Because most farmers only have access to their immediate markets, right? So they take their products to their market deals, right? They sell to their neighbors, their friends, and other villagers, right? And those guys generally can't afford so much. So the pricing it's always very limited. But when we came and opened up the markets to the farmers, right, link them up to processors who can process their cassava to cassava flour, who can process their cassava to starch, who can process their cassava to glucose syrup and stuff like that, right? Having those mass buyers in the market created so much demand downstream that our farmers are able to price up cassava, you know. So from the first year when you had about 6,000 or 7,000 naira per ton for that farmers could make from cassava, before the project ended last year, ignoring inflation and FX changes, right? Farmers is selling a ton of cassava for 13,000 naira. That's like 5 times increase. Of course, there's inflation, there's extra issues there as well, right? But overall, because you have so much demand from processors, so much demand from markets outside Nigeria at the time, they are making so much money. So what the problem we now started having for as kava was a lot of farmers came on stream to plant cassava at the time because there's not money to make. But what you now had the next year was you now had a glut of cassava in the market, and of course the prices dropped, but not to the level they were before. So I think overall, so access to market is huge for farmers. That to me is the biggest issue, and that's what we're trying to solve for, or buy from farms. And then generally, other issues, so that to me was our biggest problem we came on, and that's what we solved for in the first stage, and which we are trying to solve for now, and ensure it's more sustainable going forward. The reason why buy from farms is actually more commercial is because then was more an impact project, was funded by the Gates Foundation, right? But now if you can try and build a commercial case for buy from farms, then you can run yourself going forward. That's why we set up now. Then in terms of other problems you face overall, I think the other one again to the infrastructure, right? Now this is common across African nations, right? There's lack of infrastructure, right? There are no roads to move your trust to the farms. You know, you can't even call. You know, the roads are bad. There are no trucks. You have no train. So infrastructure is a big one as well that farmers face in our countries, which we really can't solve for. But it's a problem that's big and that remains. That's one as well. And then for us again, it's also government support as well, right? Because no matter how much you try to solve for all these other issues in these markets, if the government who are the biggest stakeholder overall, if they are not supportive or their policies that actually detract from what you do, they never make progress, right? You know, so things like ensuring that when you tell farmers that a certain products like cassava flour, are now imports are banned, for example, ensure you can enforce those bans so local guys can produce and sell. Ensuring that those kind of policies work, for example. These are things, these are areas in the government, ensuring that, wheat millers, instead of importing wheat from outside Nigeria, they can use things like, again, using just as in Lagos right now. Same applies in Tanzania and Uganda. Ensuring that, local millers are forced, not forced, they are encouraged to use our local products versus imports. That's an area where government can play a part as well. And then the last thing for us is actually farmer education, right? Farmers are not the most educated, like you expect. So it's like, trying to push them on the best farming practices, right? It's also a tough one. So we're trying to change mindset from decades of practices on how they farm, how you make your ridge, how you harvest, how you weed. I'm trying to tell them, hey, by the way, stop, forget this variety. Plant this variety. The variety you have today can give you 7 tons per hectare, right? But this variety, that we just got from IIT or the research agency can give you 5 times that, right? Trying to get them to buy stuff like that, trying to get them this work. So things like that. So how you change your mindset for those who are not very experienced. Also a barrier we face as well. But that to me, it's something we've crossed now, because over time we build trust with farmers, and they trust us a lot more now. To do what is in their best interest overall. Yeah, that's that for me in terms of challenges and our biggest accomplishment, which is, like I said, is from market access, right? Oh, and by the way, the other big one, which I forgot to mention, is actually that we created downstream industries, right? In over 5 years, we're able to create processing companies to take off products from farms. So in Nigeria, we set up about 114 processing factories, small factories to process root crops, yam, cassava, maize. In Tanzania, we had 5, like 2, 3 in Mwanza, 1 around Dar es Salaam. Uganda, we had about 5 too, in northern region, Mira and the rest. In Malawi, we had a big one. Far from Zumba. Zumba is far outside Blantyre and stuff like that. So we actually drove a lot of processing because, again, like you said, for Africa, one of the goal is to try and ensure Africans can export processed products. It's just raw products, right? The more you process our products, the more value you add to the product, the more money you make, which is really what we want to do, right? Revenue increase. So to set up those processing factories for Kava is a big one. And again, we now work with them to be our off-takers for buy from farms.
Thank you very much, Alex. And as we're now, this is going to be a last general question for all 3 of you to answer before I hand it back over to Amiola to move us into the closing part of this webinar. Thank you again all so much for the knowledge that you've been sharing and the dialogue that we've been having here. So the question that I have for all 3 of you, and we can start with Dr. Mandara, is what you believe in one word is the key element that you would focus on during this COVID-19 pandemic time to push you to the next level as an organization. Thank you.
Creativity. We will focus on creativity because the world is different and we've got to do things very, very different.
Thank you. And then we can go over then to David.
There's a question here in the chat panel that I'm actually that I would like to address as well, if you don't mind. But before answering your questions on that question, I would also like to reach out to Dr. Mandala.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also to Alex as well. There's something that Dr. Mandela said, and that's the psychological support. And I would also like to say that your work sounds quite remarkable, and I'm actually looking forward to potentially working with you, because I can imagine a potential collaboration where the girls that you train could also intern in the micro businesses that we will be impacting in those areas. And that can even start giving them very early work experience in applying the knowledge that they gain from your classes, and helping those micro businesses as well, in the northern states that you're currently operating. So I'm looking forward to that potential collaboration. But in terms of psychological support, we also face the same challenge in Phonema. Now, because we're very hands-on with our founders, unlike a regular VC where you provide capital and then you check in every now and then, maybe once a month or once a week through management reports, you don't get to experience the trenches, the frontline heat of the battle that entrepreneurs face. Now, in our model, because we are in the trenches with the founders, we are in the front line facing the battle. We've also find ourselves being unofficial psychiatrists, helping the founders to pick themselves up whenever they're down. We've come to realize that, yes, numbers may say that 9 out of 10 startups fail because of maybe lack of capital, bad timing, maybe the market wasn't ready, or maybe not enough consumers, or whatever the case might be. But we don't really think that that's the reason why businesses fail. We believe the one key reason why businesses fail is because the founders give up. Prior to the pandemic, the e-commerce space was rendered almost non-existent. And yes, we did have players in the e-commerce space. We had the likes of Jumia, we had the likes of Konga, but there was no traction in the market, right? And we saw many startups starting and then giving up. But the pandemic happened, and that sector changed automatically. Now, I can't even imagine the number of businesses that decided that, hey, this is the bad idea. Let us change our model and do something else. I can't even begin to imagine how they're feeling right now, because the e-commerce space, and also specifically the delivery space, is growing really fast here in Africa. Now, the founders who did not give up are the founders that are reaping the benefits right now. So we find ourselves, supporting our founders sometimes. Sometimes we could even take on the role of leading the company to when the founder is happy enough, or must have gone through the funk, and they are back in high spirits, and they can then take over the reins from our hands. And Alex, you mentioned something about the government policies affecting the prices of the crops, and that could really affect your farmers. One thing that we've tried to do, and I'm not too sure how that can play in your space, but I'll be more than happy to have a chat with you later on, and maybe even work with you as well. One thing we try to do in Phonema is, from the get-go, we drive collaboration between our companies across different countries. So we've got companies in Nigeria, we have in South Africa, we also have in Germany. And from the very early stages of working with our founders, and even within the very early stage of growing the business, we drive collaboration. We have them start exploring new markets in the countries where we have portfolio companies, and we have them to we bring them together, and by leveraging on the market access that a company might have. For example, we have a company in South Africa that is offering business digitalization software to very small businesses. And then we have a financial service company in Nigeria that is offering loans. And now we are currently structuring a way through which they can explore the South African market by working with that portfolio company in South Africa to offer loans to their own businesses. And now the company in South Africa is exploring the possibility of offering their digitalization software to the customers of our fintech company in Nigeria. Now, that way, by helping our founders to think bigger than the local markets, broaden their target addressable markets, they can easily withstand shocks and easily avoid constitution risk. So that's one thing that that's one model that we've designed from the get-go with every company in a portfolio, and that has helped them actually during this pandemic, and it's still helping them as well. And I would quickly address, someone asked a question in the chat, I'm just seeing it actually, an anonymous attendee. And I'll read it out for everyone's benefit. Hey, David, this hybrid model where you're providing support sounds amazing. My question is, how does Phonema make money if the companies in your portfolio don't pay for the support? That's a very tricky question. I have to say so we take equity for what we do. We take minority equity in our companies, and we've invested over 4 to 5 years to show our founders that we're very, very much dedicated to the growth. However, we structured our investment in 2 key ways. We start with human capital because we know that is more important than financial capital for the stage at which we are meeting the companies, and also for the markets that they're addressing. And through the human capital, we have like an incubation period of 18 to 24 months, after which we know that they're now ready to access financial capital. And through our financial capital, it's very easy to have a strong business plan for the fund. We can easily say that because of what we've done with this company over 2 to 3 years, we have a very strong business plan. We know the growth rate that they can achieve in the next 4 years, and we know the kind of returns that we can get out of the fund. Then we can start investing in them, and there, of course, capital gain. And because we understand the nature of this business, we know the ones that can easily, exit through an IPO, and I'll come to the IPO part very shortly. We also know the companies that can easily exit through an acquisition or by merging with a potential corporate company. Now, for the IPO part, because we drive collaboration between our companies, and we help them to enter new markets across the emerging markets, because we are not just focused on Africa, we're focused on the entire emerging markets. We know that can open them up to potential IPO opportunities that are not from, they don't have to IPO in Nigeria. It's not mature enough for that, but they can exit in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. They can explore the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, and depending on the size and of their growth and the kind of PE investments, maybe the kind of deals that they can get in their Series B and Series C stage, they can also exit in the New York Stock Exchange, because we're also designing a program through which every company can register. They can have an office in the US. They can also set up an entity in Europe. So that is one way. It's for Phonema, our money making is more of a long-term play. We didn't start this business to make money, right? We started Phonema to first of all solve the grassroots problems. Now we understand that requires a lot of patience. It's a long-term play. I like to call it delayed gratification. But we also know that by building these companies with our founders, we are creating value, and the value that we create is, of course, increasing the value of our stake in these organizations. Yes, we might have some quick opportunities to make capital gains in quick funds that we can set up to invest in the companies once they've been able to reach a certain maturity stage of ripe for investments. But we know in the long term, the equity that we own through human capital is also going to be very, very profitable and quite valuable in the future. So that's how we've designed our revenue model. We started with impact, and we're going to end. We started with purpose, and we plan to end with profits in the future. And I'm sorry, I forgot your question. I'd like to address that quickly.
You touched on it a bit, I think, but go ahead and reiterate just the one word that you think that you and Phonema need to focus on during this COVID-19 pandemic time to reach the next stage of success as a business, as a company.
I would say, don't give up. Dedication. And just we're staying true to our game. because we believe that in every season we've got winners and losers. It's very obvious, right? And we've got companies like Zoom, companies like Shopify growing remarkably well. So why can't we be like these companies? And by understanding that they're winners and losers, we're working with our founders to start to reposition themselves, put in place the right strategies. I mean, we did create a strategy framework for them for the next 18 months, and we're working with them to execute that efficiently. So we're not giving up. We see this as a plus, actually.
Thank you very much, David. And to finish off, I'll ask Alex the same question. What do you believe that you and Buy From Farms need to focus on it during this COVID-19 pandemic to reach that next level of success as a company?
No, I think for Buy From Farms, right? Because we are at the early stage of our phase 2. I think the key thing for us is actually getting our strategy right, ensuring, which is actually why we have the use of working for us right now. Ensure we get the crops right, ensure we get our currencies right, ensuring we get the supply mapping right as well. I think, and since that's the most you can do remotely, right? I think if you get the foundation and the base right, I think we should be good to go post-COVID, or if they become the new normal, right? So that's what I'm hoping to crack within the next few weeks.
Thank you very much, all of you again, Alex, David, and Dr. Mandara. Emil, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Adesi, and thank you to all our panelists. Just before we do a quick wrap up, I'll just give Ola 1 minute to share some of her views. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say thank you so much to all our panelists, to the other the students, and Emiola for coming on this vision and this ride. I want to thank everybody that tuned in and is listening to the discussion. I hope you're able to take something valuable away from all that was discussed and said. I just wanted to touch on how this came about and coin on collaboration. I know David talked about a lot about that, and also Alex and Dr. Mandara. One of the ways that this came along was because I get the opportunity to shuttle between Nigeria and the US because I run a business with my mom, who is my partner on ground in Nigeria. So I do a bit of shuttling back and forth and spend probably about 30% of the year in Nigeria. But that opportunity I got the chance to see people doing good work on ground, usually in small pockets. And because of the opportunity also, I have been also be given the opportunity to speak on different platforms in colleges and on other platforms about entrepreneurship in Africa or doing scalable work in Africa. And the last speaking engagement was actually at Cornell University that SOSA put together. SOSA stands for Societies Scholars in Our Society and Africa. And I spoke on a panel about entrepreneurship in Africa. They also presented some projects, work that they've done in different parts of Africa. And this is how DOWA was birthed, is that a word? But basically, we started talking about, I and Emilia started talking about how we can put together all these resources and get everybody that is that has the best interest of Africa on their minds or their hearts, working together. And basically that's how DOWA got started, with the students in SOSA on different campuses across the US, and with our partner organizations that saw the value in what we're doing, in the work the students are able to do. I just wanted to give a little bit just of how DOWA came about. But the idea of just being able to collaborate, I know there's some people that ask questions about practical ways of helping DOWA grow, and how interns, what kind of interns are we looking for? At this point, DOWA is growing. We're seeing the possibilities, not just for interns, for mentors, professionals that can mentor interns working on projects, to just project work as opposed to internship duration work, to co-ops, to coming on ground, to actually work. That was what DOWA was planning to do before COVID-19 happened, and we had to re-strategize and switch it up to a virtual program. But I would just want to thank everybody for participating, and to look for more things that we're going to be doing in the future. We're looking at what the internship pilot program is going to be like at the end of this, just the results of it, the benefits of it, and how we can grow it in future. So please stay tuned, find ways to connect with us, and see how you could also collaborate with us, with all the partner organizations, with the students at SOTA, and with other organizations that are doing good work in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ola. So I'm just going to wrap up now. And I think David has done a lot of the work in trying to address the synergies, because one of the things that we're trying to create is also not just bring the interns around, but as Tamika said, seek ways for collaboration. And David talked a lot about that when he was already looking at ways to collaborate with the other partner organizations. Like, that's very interesting. And I think that that's part of what we want to see with DOWA as we go forward. And I also, heard from Dr. Mandara and David and Alex about creativity, about dedication, and about strategy, things they want to focus on. And I think as individuals, these are things that we also want to focus on, even given, what has happened with the pandemic. And I will also say that one of the things that I've realized about what is going on and what is happening and how everybody's adapting is agility is very important. You need to be able to change really quickly, adapt to the situation, and move on, try and find innovative ways of doing things. And I think that we're in a space where Africa can do that. A lot of people have talked about it for many years, and how Africa is going to leapfrog everything because we didn't have to do, we skipped some of the stages, and we have so much technological advancement to help us leapfrog. We haven't really done that yet, but I hope that with all of these conversations that are happening and the work that is going on and the connections that we're making as individuals and as organizations, we will be able to get there and actually really do that. I would also say that for the questions that have been left unanswered, we have grabbed them and we will put the answers in our social media platforms. Please look out for that and try and connect with us. As Sinuke said, collaboration and innovation are very important for us in the work that we want to see done on the continent. And the more we can do that, the better for us. So we look forward to opportunities of doing that with everyone. Thank you so much again for taking the time out of your Saturday to join us from wherever it is that you joined. We're truly grateful. I want to thank especially the panelists for answering all our questions, and our interns and our fellows, the partner organization. It's been really wonderful working with you all. Thanks to Ola as well for starting this initiative. And thanks again to everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.